guns, murder, crime, nudity, drugs, alcohol, sex, heist, and pretty much every swear word ever created in the online voice chat. And yet, tell me if this is you sometime in your gaming career. You've been in that situation where you wanted to play a cool new game, but your parents probably would not have approved of it. But thankfully, your parents weren't too attentive to what went on in your video games, and they let you play it anyways, despite the fact that it really wasn't made for you. What is up, everybody? Chaos here, and today we're going to be checking out some games that you at one point in your life were probably way too young to be playing, but you played it anyway. Be sure to let me know in the comments which game you used to play when you were too young and you were worried about getting caught. Drop a like on the video, and here we go. Kicking things off is Rainbow Six Siege. This very, very popular tactical shooter released in late 2015. It actually got mixed reviews. It had solid gameplay and the concept was good, but it didn't have any content. People thought it wasn't worth the AAA tag of $60, but Ubisoft stuck with it. They reworked the gameplay and the business model to make it one of the most popular games in the world right now. And Siege is very communication based. And if you want to succeed, you absolutely have to be talking to your teammates. And with that being said, if you spent any time in Siege, you've probably encountered plenty of very young people on your team doing their best to keep up. Maybe it's the fact that the game had Tom Clancy on the box, and many parents associate that name with his famous novels and not the graphic content that often comes with his games. And while Siege may not be the most violent game in the world, honestly it's pretty tame compared to other games on this list we're going to talk about, it's still a very mature toned game, and it's probably not for younger kids. Does anybody remember Blitz the League? Anybody at all? Nowadays, if you want an American football game, you have to buy Madden. However, before EA essentially formed a monopoly over the football game genre, there were many more options for you to choose from. One of those was Blitz the League, which many young gamers ended up playing because their parents just assumed it was a sports game and there was nothing for them to worry about. Well, they were wrong. For those that don't know, Blitz the League was an M-rated, ultra-violent version of football featuring 18 fictional teams and the rules being tweaked a bit to kind of resemble arena football or what is it, the X-League or whatever, rather than traditional American football like the NFL. It's the XFL, which is actually coming back in like a month or two. Blitz allows players to unleash powerful tackles and takedowns, which will shatter bones and cause brutal injuries, which the game will put into slow-mo with an X-ray to get the maximum reaction out of the crowd. It's like Mortal Kombat for football. The game was banned in Australia due to its glorification of steroids, but in the US, there were tons of players who loved it for its over-the-top take on the sport. And too bad many parents weren't paying close enough attention when their kids picked this one out. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to drop a like on the video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel with post notifications on so you always get alerted when a new video goes up and you can get that elusive first comment. And number 8, Counter-Strike. Why in the world are there so many young kids on CSGO? Does anybody know the reason? With many of the games on this list, I can at least come up with some theories as to why there are so many parents letting their kids play these games. But for Counter-Strike, I'm empty. The series started in the late 90s. It was a mod for the first Half-Life game, and it quickly grew in its own standalone series. And today, the most recent entry, CSGO, of course, is free to play and by far one of the most played games on Steam. It boasts hundreds of thousands of active players at any given time on any given day. So maybe it's the fact that it's free to play, or maybe it's the fact that it can be run on pretty much any computer. But whatever the reason is, there are a lot of young kids on CSGO, and with how violent the game is and how vulgar that community is, come on now, you know they are, I'll never understand why parents keep shrugging this one off. Next up is House of the Dead. We're going all the way back to the 90s, when arcades were still popular. Man, those were the days, man. Just take a freaking pocket full of quarters and go have fun. There's quite a few games that they did their best to push the boundaries of when they had arcades up and what the arcade machine would do. This led to the creation of many gory arcade games, and one of the most popular ones was the iconic zombie shooter House of the Dead. Released in the arcades in '96, House of the Dead was a light gun shooter that had you playing as one of 2 secret agents attempting to infiltrate the house of a mad scientist who was doing experiments to bring corpses back to life. House of Dead is often regarded as one of the best zombie franchises ever, and it's definitely something that helped popularize zombies in pop culture again in the late 90s and the early 2000s. However, since it was a zombie game, it was extremely gory, with chunks of bloody flesh flying around whenever you killed an enemy, and regardless, kids everywhere sank quarter after quarter after quarter into House of the Dead, and it quickly got a ton of sequels and became one of the most financially successful arcade franchises in our history. PUBG, massive success of a game. I'm sure you already know that. Now, it wasn't the first Battle Royale game, despite what the developers try to say. It was definitely the one that made VR games mainstream, and it still has a huge player base right now, especially thanks to the Xbox One and PS4 ports. But as you probably guessed, there's a ton of younger gamers playing PUBG. Now, this game isn't nearly as bad as others on the list, but it's still puzzling why this game seems to be okay for kids by many parents. You've got guns, blood, killing, violence, so on and so forth. And as far as VR games go, PUBG is certainly the most realistic, but parents continue to let their kids play it, so, I mean, what do I know? I don't know. Again, it's not nearly as bad as other games on this list, but I think we can all agree it's not exactly a kid's game. And when I say a kid's game, I'm talking young kids. I'm talking kids like 6 years old playing this game. At number 5, Halo. Now this one should be obvious. Halo first launched in late 2001 and was an instant success. It spawned a massive franchise and is one of the highest grossing game IPs of all time. But if you've spent any time in Halo, you know there have always been a ton of kids, squeakers, whatever you want to call them, online. It was arguably the game that popularized the term squeaker, as it was extremely common to hear literal children in voice chat trying to talk smack to big kids or adults. Now, Halo is considered to be pretty tame compared to the other big-name multiplayer shooters, and the rating has even dropped from M to T, but back in the early 2000s, parents hated this game. Many parents thought Halo was insanely inappropriate and far too violent for kids. And honestly, I get it to a degree, as there really wasn't much to compare it to back then. It was one of the first really mainstream M-rated video games, and if you go back and play the campaign of the first couple games, it's definitely not something you'd probably want a 5-year-old playing, and that's not even getting into the stuff you hear in voice chat while you're playing online. So while Halo is definitely tamed down, the older games, well, I get it. Despite the fact that there are a ton of them playing it anyway, I get it. Let's go back to another arcade shooter from the 90s, Area 51. They tried to push the boundaries. This one actually should make a comeback with everybody storming in September. Often remembered as one of the best light gun shooters of all time. Area 51 was published by Atari in 1995. It had you playing as a soldier trying to stop an alien invasion at the Area 51 facility. You were equipped with your light gun as you fought off both aliens and zombies who were created by the aliens, and the gore effects were pretty impressive for the time. It boasted bloody chunks flying around, screams of agony from your targets. The game, it was a huge success. It sold more cabinets and home console versions than most other light gun shooters at the time, but that of course meant there were way more kids playing than there probably should have been due to the lack of supervision at most arcades. Now, part of me wishes arcades were more popular now, so people could have somewhere to go experience these classic games, because when you think about it, there are going to be a ton of gamers in the coming years who never actually get to experience a ton of great games because there aren't any places to host arcade machines. I'm going to guess half of you watching this may have never even stepped into an arcade. Speaking of arcade games, of course, Mortal Kombat, the game that arguably started the trend of seeing what we can get away with. Mortal Kombat definitely wasn't the first gory arcade game, but it was the first super successful one, which led to tons of outrage from pissed off parents due to the fact that their kid could walk into an arcade and then see someone getting their spine ripped out of their body. The original Mortal Kombat launched in '92, and it was a 2D fighting game with a more realistic style than the competition, namely Street Fighter II at the time, due to the use of digitized actors instead of sprites. But this use of digitized actors, mixed with extremely violent and gore, kickstarted the entire controversy and led to a ton of debates over whether or not video games cause real-world violence. Thanks, Mortal Kombat. Today, we look at MK as one of the best fighting game franchises of all time, and a pretty important part of gaming's growth as the entertainment medium. But I think we can all agree that we were probably too young to be playing this one in the arcades. But to be fair, we didn't know any better, right? At number 2, another obvious choice, Call of Duty. Now, Call of Duty has way too many super young kids playing it, but hey, it is what it is. Halo may have been the game that popularized the term squeaker, but Call of Duty was the game that took that term and they ran around the world with it. COD absolutely dominated the multiplayer shooter world on the 7th console generation with the Modern Warfare trilogy and the first 2 Black Ops game, a period that many COD fans consider to be the franchise's golden age. But with so many millions of people playing the game, there were obviously going to be a lot of kids looking to get in the action. This led to kids getting exposed to the over-the-top violence and insane profanity and trash talk that the community is known for. You would think, as time went on, parents would become more and more aware of what their kids are playing, but it seems that in Call of Duty's case, there are more kids playing it every single year, which is a trend I don't see it stopping. And at number 1, there was no doubt ever. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to drop a like on the video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel with post notifications on so you always get alerted when a new video goes up and you can get that elusive first comment. GTA. Now, this started off as somewhat of a cheesy top-down game in '97, but it transitioned into a revolutionary and insanely popular third-person open-world format with GTA 3 in 2001, and that is where kids started taking notice. With the 6th console generation getting titles like San Andreas and Vice City, to the 7th generation getting GTA 4 and 5, to the modern generation still playing GTA 5, thanks to Rockstar's constant support and the massive modding community on PC, millions upon millions of people play it every day. And a good chunk of that are kids. As far as content goes, GTA has pretty much everything you don't want your kid to see. Guns, murder, crime, nudity, drugs, alcohol, sex, heists, and pretty much every swear word ever created in the online voice chat. And yet, there are a ton of young kids that play it. It seems every gamer has a story of playing GTA as a kid, either with or without their parents' knowledge. And I guess that's just what happens when you have a franchise this monumentally successful. So tell me, how old were you when you played your first GTA game, and which one was it? And there you have it, my friends. Those were some games that you probably didn't want to get caught playing at a certain time in your life. If you guys enjoyed, drop a like, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on those post notifications, and I'll see you soon.